You ever find yourself near a conversation where one person appears prepared for that conversation? They know what they're talking about. They're actually discussing things in a genuine way that makes it seem like they're actually being honest and having, an intellectual conversation. And the other person seems to have no idea what they're talking about, totally uninformed. It just has one goal, no matter what the facts and evidence say. They're just going to stick to that, and they won't move an inch from that one perspective. Well, you're about to.
You're asking students to go back. So why do you not have guidance on what a school should do just weeks before you want those schools to reopen, on what happens if it faces an outbreak?
There's really good examples that have been utilized in the private sector and elsewhere, also with.
Okay, so here we go. Always, we know the conservatives love to go, it's like a magic word for them. Private sector. It's been done in the private sector. Really? Well, yeah, in the private sector, the private schools where there's tons of money to throw around, little bit different than the public schools that most of our children go through. So yeah, your private sector solutions aren't really going to hold up. And if they were, why aren't you implementing them in a guidance, right? That's one of the things that the federal arm of these agencies is supposed to provide. So the Department of Education, one of the things they're supposed to do is providing guidance, right? I can tell you right now, your local school district right now is paying attention to what the districts around them are planning to do. And they're getting information from the state and trying to figure out what to do from there. But we have nothing coming from the federal government because we have people who have been put in charge of these departments who are actually put there to destroy the department, to make sure that no actual work gets done. And that's what we have here. So she's being called out about, well, why isn't there any guidance going on here? And there's no real good answer, right?
With frontline workers and hospitals, and all of that data and all of that information and all of those examples can be referenced by school leaders.
But I'm not hearing a plan from the Department of Education. Do you have a plan for what students and what schools should do?
So schools should do what's right on the ground at that time for their students and for their situation. There is no.
But also they need to open, right? You're really getting two messages here. If you listen to Betsy DeVos overall, she's got two messages. One is everyone needs to do what makes sense locally. So look at your local school district, look at your local area, and you figure out what to do, right? Because Detroit is different than rural Iowa. Yeah, of course it is. But she keeps saying, do things locally. Oh, but by the way, everyone needs to open up. So do whatever you want as long as it means everything's opened up and everyone's going to school. And why is this? Because Trump needs people back at work to get the economy going, or he's not going to get reelected. That's really one of his only legal outlets to getting reelected, is to get that economy going. So he'll do anything. He'll sacrifice 1% of us all, right? Whatever the death rate is, whatever they figure out the death rate actually is, he'll sacrifice all of us. Go back, we'll lose 1% of people, but maybe the economy can get going enough that Trump will get reelected. And in his eyes, that's a win, right? So to do that, we need students back at school so the parents can go back to work. So him and DeVos and all these people can continue to destroy the very government agencies that were supposed to be there to protect us in the first place. Right? So remember, two things coming out of DeVos. One, do what you want locally as long as that means everyone's going back to school.
I am urging all schools to open and to be providing their students a full-time education. We all acknowledge that could and may well look different in a certain area that has a flare-up of the virus.
So notice how she has no actual answers for any of the questions. She just keeps going back to open up, open up, open up. And yeah, if you have to make decisions locally, that's fine. But make sure you open up while you're doing it, right? There's no actual accounting of any kind of facts or meaningful messaging here that means anything. There is nothing coming out of DeVos that has any actual meaning. She just wants us all to go back. The kids will spread it to everyone. We'll lose 1% of the adults. That's fine because the economy will do well.
But the go-to should be that schools are opening and fully functional and operational and giving parents and families the flexibility that's necessary. So if there is
So
a
just to be
situation
clear,
where a
to get back to
child is a
work.
vulnerable, has a vulnerable, underlying condition, that the parents could have a choice to be
okay,
able
so
to.
just to be clear, are you saying that in areas where
educate
there is
their-
a flare-up, that schools should revert to remote learning?
I'm saying that schools should have plans, like Miami-Dade County has. They should have plans, and the parents and families should know what their options are.
I'm asking you, ma'am, as Secretary of Education, if there is a flare-up, should schools revert to remote learning? You're very aggressive about saying reopen, and the next question, the obvious question is, what happens if they feel that they can't? Are you comfortable with remote learning if they can't?
I think the go-to needs to be kids in school, in person, in the classroom, because we know for most kids that's the best environment for them.
I understand that,
and
but
we have
what
to
if they
also
can't?
understand. What if they can't? What?
What if the school district feels that they can't safely go into the school because there is a flare-up in that district? Remote learning, are you okay with it in that situation?
If there's a short-term flare-up for a few days, that's a different situation than planning for an entire school year in anticipation of something that hasn't happened. That's a very different thing. Kids have got to be back in school. They've got to be back in the classroom. And working families have to have their children in school.
Okay,
and knowing that.
So we got it. So a couple of things. So we know that school's the best place for kids. Well, yeah. That's fairly obvious that school's the best place for kids in a non-pandemic situation, right? I think we might have some difference of opinions when there's a global pandemic going on. And let's remember, we're not looking so good right now, right? The rest of the world is looking at us going, what is wrong with you people that the virus is absolutely blowing up and you're talking about sending everyone to school? This is ridiculous. But she just spelled it out. We got to get everyone back. She doesn't care. As some of us go, we got to get the families back to work, right? She's saying it. So it's obvious what happened, right? They gave DeVos her marching orders and said, go out, tell everyone we need to get kids back to school. She didn't even bother to sit down and figure out a good reason for it other than just keep saying again and again, kids need to go back to school. That's the best place for them. I mean, she didn't even try to spout facts. At least you got someone like Jim Jordan. He throws things out. Sure, they're wrong, but you can tell he put a little work into like preparing his lies, right? Here, DeVos just comes out and it's like she didn't think anyone was going to call her on it. And she's totally unprepared for it, doesn't know what she's talking about, and didn't really give a single good reason in that whole interview why we should put our kids in danger. All right, so let's take a bonus look at another individual that is highly credible and really has my best interest at heart when making government decisions.
And this week, Florida ordered schools to reopen this fall. The governor said this.
If you can do Home Depot, if you can do Walmart, if you can do these things, we absolutely can do the schools. I want our kids to be able to minimize this education gap that I think is developed.
It should not be a political issue. It should be based on the facts. And if we see that this is very low risk, and we see, I think overwhelmingly in every study, that the school kids are not vectors of transmission.
I mean, that last point is still, I think, under study. We know NIH is doing a study, in fact, on that very issue.
Yeah, it's totally still under study, right? They're not saying that kids aren't vectors. They're saying that kids don't get the virus as bad as adults. But there are kids dying. There are kids having permanent damage. We need to be careful. Plus the fact that they're all going to spread it to each other and then bring it home to the adults. So this doesn't make any sense. We're taking advice from an individual who doesn't know the difference between a Walmart, a Home Depot, and a school. When do you go to Home Depot and you've got 40 people crammed in a small area, sitting next to each other, talking, breathing the whole time? It doesn't make sense. Okay, so once again, we have an individual who has financial and personal interest in the economy going, which we all do. We all want the economy going. But I'm not willing to risk people's lives in order to do it. I mean, these states that were opening up in irresponsible ways got called out. People are saying, you're going to have a blow up, you're going to have a blow up. And now those states are blowing up, right? This stuff, like, sure, the details of the virus are complicated, right? We're still trying to answer questions that science hasn't figured out for this particular virus yet. But there are things we do know. If we all get together in groups of 35 to 40 in the same room within arm's distance of each other, the virus is going to spread. That is not an unanswered question. That is a thing that has been answered. We know it's going to spread. We may not know the exact percentage that's going to spread. We may not know it in detail, but it's pretty well understood. You stick 35, 40 kids in a room, kids who aren't washing their hands enough, not wearing their masks. Either way, even if they're masked and washed hands, you're not supposed to put 40 people in a room right now. But people are telling us it's in our best interest because we need to go make them money. Let's remember, worker wages suck, right? So people aren't even getting paid properly for going back and putting their lives on the line. But we're supposed to go do that. We're all supposed to get right back to work immediately. A bit of a heads up. So Saturday at 6, I will be live streaming all the news stories that I was not able to get through during the week. Some of the stories that slipped through the cracks, didn't have time for. Some of the stories that are maybe not as serious but are interesting to talk about for a few minutes, that kind of stuff. We'll be doing that Saturday, 6 o'clock Pacific time on YouTube. Hopefully you can join us and we'll see you then. Otherwise, please hit that subscribe button so you can get all the new content as it becomes available in the future.